Hey everybody, it's your boy VG Time back again. This time we are bringing you my very first Star Wars Unlimited deck profile and tournament report. This was our first week of constructed play. There was the pre-release, which I did not attend, which was sealed. Then there was a booster draft right after I learned the rules. And in that draft, I was able to get the Showcase Jyn Erso leader. A beautiful card right here. And I wanted to make a deck around it and have it be my constructed or premier is what they call it deck. The reason being also because she's a very off meta leader, like people don't actually play her at all, and I actually don't understand why, because she's extremely good at what she does, and she does require you to play differently and to think, and I think that's one of the big issues. So let me explain what I mean by that. The game, because of its hype, had already had sims made for it, tabletop simulator versions, and during that time they created a meta, right? And so aggro in any game format early on is going to be a meta thing. And so in this case, the big meta decks were Sabine Wren using green as his off color, Princess Leia Organon using red as his off color, Iden using green as his off color, and then everything else kind of was like, you know, here's your one control representative, or here's something else. But most of the time it was aggro. So knowing that, I constructed an aggro deck that was also anti-aggro. So you're gonna still be able to beat all the random rogue decks, but you could also beat the aggro decks pretty effectively because you are able to take advantage of this leader's ability. So as far as like what my matchups were, they were first round Sabine Splash Green. I cleared that in 3 games, mainly because I had to learn the matchup, right? So before the event started, I was able to play some practice games against someone who played the deck pretty well. My friends was watching me just get dumpstered, and they were wondering why I was just sitting there getting dumpstered. So what I tried to explain to them was I wasn't going to show what my whole deck does, right? I was gonna let them do their thing, see exactly what the entire landscape is. My ego isn't big enough to try to win practice games of Star Wars, right? I'm not trying to sit there and win. I'm trying to sit there to learn. So if I lose 4 games in a row, who cares? As long as when the event comes, I'm ready. I saw how this guy played. I said, okay, he's not quite as good as the guy who I went against in the practice. So I turned it on and just plowed through him in the next 2 games. Pause. Second round, I went against Iden, Splashing Green, which we already kind of talked about. That is less of it is an aggro deck, but it's kind of an annoying aggro deck. That you have like these great low drops, but because of her ability to constantly heal, it makes it harder for you to kill her. The game usually extends out a little bit further, and then they also have good removal baked into it. So she's more of a mid-range deck than say aggro. But I was able to take those games by out-resourcing my opponent, again understanding how to attack and prioritizing targets, and was able to get that game in 2. And then the last round I went against Princess Leia or Leia Organa Rebels, Splashing Red, and I was able to clear that relatively easily. I got it in 3 and only lost the second game because I forgot a raid trigger, and we'll talk about what raid is later on in this, and that caused me 1 point of damage that I could have, that would have won me the game the following turn. That's it. Let's get into the leader, what the leader does, and I'm going to explain how that all works out in your favor. So here we are with Jyn Erso. Jyn Erso has the effect of being able to rest her to make one of your guys attack that is in active mode, but when it attacks the opponent's guy, their guy loses 1 attack. So this means that when things are like even, like 3 3s or 4 4s attacking into each other, your guys live, their guys don't. This also means that certain weird trades happen. So the popular stats of 2 drops are 3-2 or 2/3s with effects, right? So if you have a 3/2 and they have a 2/3 with an effect, you're able to tap her, make the 3/2 attack their 2/3. That 2/3 would now be a 1/3. You'll be able to clear it, and then you'll only take 1 damage back and keep your guy. Once you get to, and that's basically the fundamentals of it, right? Once you get to 6 energy, you're able to deploy this leader. It becomes a 4/7. It still has the alliance trait. It's a rebel. That matters with this deck quite a bit, both of those things. She's a 4/7, which means she's fairly difficult to clear. And she gives this static effect of whenever one of your friendly units, including herself, attacks a defender, it gets -1, -0. So a lot of times on a turn you play her, you're just basically clearing their board off while maintaining your board, and it causes a lot of headache for your opponent. As far as your base, I play the basic 30 health base. I do have the rare base, that's 25. I believe other than the green one, playing a 25 health base is literally suicide in today's format because of how prevalent aggro is, right? And I had a lot of people say to me after their games were over, like, man, it was so close. You know, if I had like another attack or two, and I would say to them, well, that's why I played a 30 health base. You basically spotted me 5 damage. And their mind was like open, like, wow. So keep that in mind. I know, you know, everybody will be walking around there with 25 health bases thinking it's cool, but that's not exactly what you want to be doing in this environment of heavy aggro. Speaking of which, we are technically a heavy aggro deck. The difference is that, again, we could trade off with the other heavy aggro decks in a controlling manner. But if we're going against a control matchup, we're just as fast as they are, just about. So we're going to start with our 1-drops. 1-drops is weird here, right? So the game starts you off with 2 resources. So typically, your 1-drops are 2 costed. But I actually play real 1-drops, and there's a reason for it. First one is Special Force Soldier. So this card right here is useful at all points in time in the game. It's a 2/2 for 1 that you get to choose a unit, and it loses Sentinel for the turn. It does not have to be in the same area as in. So the way this game works is you have ground units and you have space units, right? And Sentinel works in the arena that it's in. So if you're on the ground and someone has a Sentinel on the ground, you have to attack that guy before you can attack anything else on the ground or their base. And a similar thing in the air. So if you have lethal, but they have a Sentinel out somewhere in space, and you have lethal in space, you could just play this guy, take away their Sentinel, and now they're no longer protected by that effect, and then it will allow you to be able to swing through with the rest of your stuff just strong right away. The other thing is that this card sets up an extremely aggressive first turn that most other decks cannot match you with, and that is by playing Benthic 2 Tubes. So Benthic 2 Tubes has the effect that when it attacks, you get to give another red unit Raid 2. So I said I was going to mention what Raid does. Raid is a mechanic that says that when this creature attacks, it gets plus X attack power equal to the raid number. So you will swing with this, give this Raid 2, and now instead of this swinging for just 2, it swings for 4. That's important for a couple of reasons. One is a bunch of damage. If they didn't open and on ground with you, let's say you play this guy, they didn't care, and they opened in space. If you then play this guy, they don't have really any way of reacting to you by clearing this dude. So then it comes to your turn, you get to swing for the 2, pump, swing for the 4 at their base. And if they do play something bigger or meatier after you swung for the 2, you could then swing with a 1-drop to their 3-drop and clear it off. And you use 1 energy to clear off their 3-drop that they use their entire turn's worth of energy to deal with. And then you still get to play a 3-drop and create these uneven trades. And that's basically what the deck is trying to do, is trying to create uneven trades for your opponent where you are up on resources significantly. Next up, we have a card that I'm not in love with, but you kind of have to play it because of the amount of damage it deals, which is Partisan Insurgent. Partisan Insurgent is a rebel trooper, but it is not an alliance rebel trooper, similar to like how Benthic 2 Tubes isn't. But it has inherent raid 2 as long as you have another red unit, which is super strong. So you can actually play this on 1, and then on turn 2 play like a red unit. And now this guy swings for 3. Again, this allows him to clear every 2-drop in the game without dying, especially once you put into play your leader ability. And then he could clear most 3-drops in which your leader ability do so without dying. We play Lothal Insurgent. He's a 3/2. That means that, again, if you play him out on turn 1, if they have initiative, they're probably not going to swing into him because they don't want to lose their guy. If their guy is a 2/3, they might even think that you won't swing into them, not realizing that I could just tap her, have this swing into it, and then kill it while only taking 1 damage on them. You know, stuff like that. It's kind of crazy how the math works out, but he's great. If you play him later in the game, again, most of these things have early and late game applications. You get to make your opponent draw a card and discard a card at random. For those of us who are Dragon Ball players, we know how annoying discarding a card at random is. But it's even more so in this game because our hand sizes are typically not that large. Usually somewhere around 3 or 4 cards. Unless, you know, we're doing some really crazy shenanigans, and sometimes we get up to like 5 or 6 cards, something like that. So in a lower hand size state, making them draw a card and then rip a card out their hand could kill their entire turn. We have Leia Organa. She is from the Luke Skywalker starter deck. The reason why I play her at 3 is because, again, utility all game long. So on play, she's either able to rest an opponent's unit, or she's able to untap one of your resources. So that means that you are able to, on turn 1, play her and then play like a Spec Ops soldier, and now there you go, 4 damage on the first turn. Or what I really like to use her for is to deal with deployed leaders. So this came up quite a few times, and it feels bad for a lot of people. But if I know when your leader is going to deploy, because you could just read their leader and you can see, okay, I have 4 energy, 5 energy, 6 energy, their leader could be deployed. So you hold her up, you hold up to 2 energy for her at least at some point, and you wait for them to deploy. Because people sit on leaders and they're itching, they're burning. They really just want to throw this out there. And so as soon as they do, they have to pass the priority back to you, in which case you just play lay and you tap their leader. And now they basically wasted their epic action. And if you both deploy on the same turn, you could tap their leader. They go, oh man, that sucks. And then you get to deploy your leader. And usually I could clear their leader without losing my leader. We have 2 copies of Sabine Wren. She's good all game long. I'm not going to front. She's good at all points in time in the game. Early game, she's amazing because she basically swings for 3 as a 2/3. And she's able to split her damage because on attack, she could deal 1 to either the defender or the base. So you could technically swing with her using a leader ability at like a 2/2 or something, not take damage, or even against a 3/2, kill off the 3/2 and then ping the base for 1. And that's pretty strong right there. Then we have 3 copies of Fighters for Freedom. This guy right here allows you to turn all your red cards into pings, because every time you play a red card, you're able to deal 1 damage to your opponent. Unlike Sabine, Leia, or Benthic 2 Tubes, the non-named guys, meaning like they're not like main characters in the show, they are able to be played in multiples. Because he's a 3/4, he is relatively difficult to deal with, especially when you are using your smaller drops and causing, again, these uneven trades. So usually he sits out there for a while, and then you play a second one to basically close out the game if you can, because then you'll ping him for 2 and stuff like that. It gets kind of outrageous. He also has Saboteur. That's an important ability. It's similar to what this guy does, except for it's not better than this because this is like insane, but this is pretty close. So this guy ignores Sentinel altogether. You don't even have to worry about the fact that the card has Sentinel, but it also pops shields. And that comes up, and it pops the shield before it deals the damage. And that comes up when you're going against the Iden matchup. So like they deployed their leader. I tapped my leader to make this guy swing into them. And it popped the shield on Iden, dealt 3 damage to her, and then only took 3 damage back, which meant that she was super killable. They still swung like at something else, like on my base, and then I swung with Sabine at the Iden. The Sabine ping killed the Iden before it could deal damage to Sabine and basically negated the turn. The second time they deployed it, I just played Leia and just dealt with it. But, stuff like that. One of the best cards in Alliance, Fleet Lieutenant. It gives on play, it allows you to attack with a unit, and then if that unit happens to be a rebel, which is everything in the deck except for I think 1 card, it gets +2/+0. So again, it allows you to get economy of action, because in this game, every time you make a play, unless there's a triggered ability or something attached to it, you have to pass priority back to your opponent, and then they do their play and they pass priority back to you. So when you play this guy for 3, and then his on play triggers and makes something else attack, you got to get 2 things done for 1 action, and that's another thing this deck does extremely well. Another card that does something similar is Ezra Bridger. Ezra Bridger is an insanely good card, but the problem is that he basically reads kill me, and if your opponent doesn't kill him, they're insane. First of all, get that person checked out, get them help. The other thing is that he just creates so much advantage. So what he does is when he attacks, if he survives that attack, you get to look at the top card of your deck. You can either play that card for his energy cost, put it into your drop, or leave it on top of your deck. So some of the times we are able to get some really gross plays. So for instance, you could swing with Ezra, maybe kill something because your leader ability, and then play a Fleet Lieutenant off of him, which would then cause something else to be able to attack. Or you could swing at Ezra, deal some damage to something, play a Leia, and then tap down the next play they would have had. All kinds of things you could do with Ezra Bridger. Next, we're going to get into the 4 energy play, on the ground at least. We have K2SO. This guy right here is a game winner in and of himself. He has Overwhelm, which means that if he attacks a unit and his damage is greater than their remaining health, he deals that difference to the opponent's base. He also has a when defeated ability that you could either choose to deal 3 damage to the opponent's base or make them discard a card from their hand. So a lot of times you would play this and your opponent would either kill it right away, which is probably the best way to do it, or they will avoid it like the plague because they don't want it to die. And that is probably actually the wrong way to do it. There is a 10 damage play with this card where you're able to just end the game out in a flash. So if you're allowed to untap with it and you have the combo, especially if you have priority, you're probably just winning the game right there, right then and there. So your opponent has to be aware of that. A lot of people were not, and they just died. It happens. We have Zeb Aurelius. Zeb Aurelius is the top of the ground curve. There's another card that's also at 5, but that has a very specific purpose. So Zeb Aurelius, what makes him great is that when he survives an attack, if he KO'd the guy that he was attacking, he deals 4 damage to another ground unit. So typically what you want to do with Zeb Aurelius is swing on something small and then have his damage kill something big. An example of that is if they happen to have a 3 drop or 2 drop out, which usually the way this deck plays, that doesn't really happen that much. Or even if you have, let's say your opponent had a opposing K2SO or whatever, you could swing into it, kill it, and then kill something else. And again, economy of action. You got to deal with 2 things for 1 action, which is his attack. Another 2 for 1 after 5 drop is Syndicate Lackey. The reason why we play this card is simply for the Sabine matchup. So for those that are not aware, Sabine Wren, the leader, is a 2/5. And I'll probably have it up here on the screen somewhere. But she's a 2/5, and as such, if you have priority the next turn, or if they just swung with something else and not Sabine right away on their next turn, you will play this guy for 5. He has ambush, which means that even though he comes in rest mode, he gets to restand to attack an opponent's unit as part of his effect. So you don't have to wait. You just play it, it untaps, and then attacks something. So it one-shots Sabine while not dying. And then in order for your opponent not to deal with 5 damage the following turn, they usually have to trade into it. And so you have, again, card economy on them because you use 1 card to deal with 2 of their cards. And if they let it live while they're crazy, unless they're way ahead on you, right? And even then, I still wouldn't let something like that live because you don't want to take 5 to the face. And that's it for the ground units. Now we have the space units. We're talking about 3 copies of Green Squadron A-Wing. This is one of our other amazing starters. You play this, it swings for 3 in the sky. Your opponent has to respond to it. And if they don't, well, they're going to be taking 3 all game. He's also has 3 toughness, which means that usually he's hard to kill. And because he swings for 3, he's able to trade with every other 2-drop space unit in the game, as well as a lot of 3-drop space units. Speaking of which, we have Wing Leader. So Wing Leader is usually your turn 2 play following up a strong turn 1 play. So for example, you could play this on turn 1 and then play a Wing Leader on turn 2 and give 2+1/+1 tokens to this guy. Or if you started with like a spec force soldier, you can play this, make this guy a 4/4 for the rest of the game, and now your opponent really has to think about it. Things like that, right? And then what I also like to do with this card is I like to play it after I deploy my leader because she is a rebel. So you get to deploy her, she's a 4/7, and then I will play this follow-up. Because a lot of people go, oh, you didn't attack, you play this follow-up, you make it a 6/9, no Takashi. And that makes it so that she is able to create really bad, uneven, again, trades. We have 2 copies of Rojo 3, so Red 3. Red 3 has the cool ability of giving Raid 1 to all the units with the little white symbol underneath it, which again is most of these guys. The ones that don't have it are the Partisan Insurgents, Benthic 2 Tubes, and Syndicate Lackey because they're not down for the cause like that. But everybody else kind of is. Because it gives Raid 1 to everything, it means that you get additional reach. And the stuff that they didn't think could deal additional damage, it throws off all the combat math. So for instance, as I mentioned, you have the leader, right? So sometimes I deploy the leader, play red 3. They think stuff is safe, and then you swing in 5 on it. And if you deploy the leader and your first play was this afterwards to make it a 6/9, you could then play red 3 and have it swing for 7. Usually you don't want to deploy the leader unless you're really ahead or your opponent thinks that you don't really have great plays or they're out of plays, and then they take priority, and then you just punish them super hard for that. The last space unit is Azatug Liberated Gunship. It's similar to this card right here. It's an ambush unit in the sky that is able to, deal with a lot of the small ships that you don't really want to trade off with. He deals with those things. So opposing red 3s, opposing Green Squadron A-Wings, you just kind of play this, kill it off, keep it pushing. Now, going along with the theme of the deck, I have really good event cards that create economy of action, as well as creating uneven trades. So the best example of that is the card Shoot First. And the reason why I think that this color combination is better at doing what it's supposed to do than, let's say, the red, greens, and stuff. Shoot First gives +1/+0 and it makes the guy attack, but the defender, it deals damage before the defender gets to deal damage. So typically, when it comes to combat, the damage is dealt simultaneously. They would, if both of them dealt enough damage to kill each other, they would just both die. With Shoot First, because your attacker deals damage first, if it kills the guy, it doesn't take the damage back. The equivalent of that is First Strike in Magic the Gathering, if you ever play that, but that's basically what it is. We have Medal Ceremony. So this card right here costs 0. That's significant because a lot of times the people don't think you have more plays, and then you just follow it up with a Medal Ceremony and you punish them for it. Basically, it gives 3 rebels that attack that turn a +1/+1 token. So that way they're just bigger for the following turn. And unlike, again, other card games, damage doesn't go away at the end of the turn in this game. So they just kind of stick around. So buffing them +1/+1 could be enough to make it so that it's no longer enticing to attack into them. We have the combo card, which is Heroic Sacrifice. This card right here gives +2/+0 to a card. You draw a card, and if that card deals damage, you defeat the card, which means you KO it. That's huge because that combos extremely well with K2SO. If they allow K2SO to live and you have this card in your hand, you're dealing no less than 9 damage to their base. And if you have Fighters for Freedom out there, you're dealing 10 damage to your base. Because you're just going to be able to pump this 2, have it swing, then it will die at the end of the turn to deal 3. And because you played a red card, this guy will ping for 1. And then last but not least, we have For a Cause I Believe In. This card I kind of slept on, but I ended up siding it in every game, so it's part of my final deck list right now. Basically, you reveal the top 4 cards of your deck, and for each one that's part of the alliance, it deals 1 damage to your opponent's base. So you're going to deal anywhere between 2 to 4 damage to their base. Because of the concentration of cards, you're usually dealing 4 damage to the base. And then if you happen to have Fighters for Freedom out, you're going to deal 5 damage to that base. And then once you're done doing the top 4 reveal, you're going to be able to put them back in any order. This came up where I played this card, revealed another copy plus 3 more alliance cards. Dealt 4, actually I dealt 5 damage to them. They took initiative. I said cool, but the card I put on top was another with the other copy of that plus another card. I drew the 2, and they did whatever they did, and the first thing I did was jam that and kill them. So again, you have reach in the deck, is uninteractable, and it basically causes them problems. So that is the deck profile. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Hopefully you guys want to see more Star Wars content. I do plan on playing this game quite heavy. And I'll see you again next time. This is VG Time signing out.